Good morning, and welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor, and this is take 3. There are some mornings that I'm just like, I don't know, I didn't like that. I have to re-record. And the last recording that I just started, I was moving my head around because I was trying to make the intro much more interesting. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about that feeling that other people are judging me, where that comes from, and what I do with it. So, the thought for the day for AA, and this is available on hazeldenbettyford.org. And if nothing else, if you don't invest in listening to any literature throughout the day, this is like a simple, really cool way. It's kind of like a daily reflection, but it's a thought for the day. It has a meditation for the day and a prayer for the day. So give it a shot if you're interested in like having a topic to focus on for the day. That's really what I'm doing here for the podcast is I like to have a topic that I'm going to think about throughout the day. And it starts out with my morning meeting and then it kind of goes from there. And so this morning we read from a thought for the day, and it was talking about instead of judging other people. For those of you who are not watching the video, Autumn is smelling my breath while I talk. It's stinky. I don't know why she would want to do that. It's morning, Autumn. It's stinky breath. Instead of judging people, looking for the good in all of them. And if you look hard enough, long enough, and subside some of those complex negative emotions, like I was talking about yesterday, it is totally possible to find good in everybody. I would challenge that. I honestly would. I think there are some humans that maybe, I'm talking about the people that end up on death row and stuff. I would challenge that they have good in them. Autumn is shoving her face in my face. She wants me to scratch her. So anyway, we're gonna ignore that, but there's good to find in everybody. And there are people that when I was working, that I was just like, they're not a nice person, but, and I think back to like being bullied when I was younger, and thinking that they're just mean people. And I am certain that they faced their own bullying or challenges. And and today it's easier for me to see that. It's easier for me to see the challenges that other people face that may have impacted the way that they behave and the how they treat other people. And it's hard to do that. There's some people who I've run across a few, but one in particular that I'm thinking about that I worked with was he had such a gigantic ego that he couldn't push past, or he was covering up so much insecurity with this big, gigantic, thick ego, like a blanket, that I couldn't see past it. But there was a moment when I was supposed to sit in a training course of his, and he was so freaking nervous that he was just like sweating and like beet red. And I thought, there it is. There is the piece of him that the blanket just didn't cover. Like I see it. And that piece of him is what makes him have such this gigantic ego that is just ridiculously annoying and offensive, but it all comes from some root cause. And when I think about judgment, like feeling that I'm being judged by other people, that is coming from within me. Um, if I were able to create this thick ego to cover up my insecurities, I probably wouldn't get as emotionally stirred up when I see somebody's face or hear somebody say something that's very judgmental against me. Um, I don't want to have a thick ego. I probably do. I know that sometimes it comes out more than others, but I don't want to do that because um, what I what I feel very strongly about is that if I create a thick ego so that I don't get impacted or emotionally stirred up by other people's comments or judgments, then I'm going to have a harder time looking within me to correct my own insecurities. Like I'm going to have a harder time um, addressing what's inside of me. So I like it the way that it is, even though it doesn't feel very good sometimes. One thing I heard this morning that was really cool was somebody said meditation is like still waters, and they allow you to see what's beneath the surface of the water. And I was like, wow, that is really cool. That's a cool way to think about it. Um, Another thing that people said, or I don't know if it was in the reading or somebody mentioned it, it was about following the blueprint of my life. So sorry, I don't know what Autumn's doing. I probably should have recorded at a different time before she got up and started walking around the room because she can't be trusted. Um, I don't know what my feelings are about whether there is a blueprint already laid out for my life, the design of my life. What I do know is that there is a design of me, a blueprint of me, how I was constructed. It's based on my experiences, it's based on my genes, and there is a almost predictable way about how I'm going to react to things. And I don't believe that everyone that I encounter is looking for the good in me. I know for sure that when I was drinking, I made it very difficult for people to look for the good in me because I think that alcohol was making that ego really thick so that nobody could see underneath. Um, and the thicker my ego was, the more I was thinking what other people were thinking about me. Um, I did some dishonest stuff when I was drinking. And the more I drank, the more I did, and the thicker my ego had to get to cover it all up. Um, when I finally got sober and I had to look back at those mistakes and I had to look back at where I wronged other people, I had to strip away that thick ego, and it did not feel good. And part of the steps, we are looking at our relationship with a higher power, whether or not you choose to call it God or whatever, him God or whatever you choose to call it, or if it's just a group of drunks, God. Um, Anything can be your higher power that helps you stay sober. So the first few steps are about that. Steps 4 through 7 are about getting right with me, are about self-searching. And I heard something this morning about there's a reading that we have every morning, and it says that self-searching is the means by which we find and do the will of God. And you can replace words if you need to. You can replace God with whatever you want to. But self-searching is the means by which we find and do the next right thing. You know, that's another way I have chosen to replace it sometimes because that's what the program lets me do. I can think about things however I please. And this self-searching allowed me to figure out where have my relationships gone sour? Where do I feel like I've made mistakes? And then, at first we look at it by who do I feel resentful towards? And then what was my role in it? All that good stuff. Well, eventually I get to the point where I'm going to uh, take action on these relationships and what my role was, and try to rebuild relationships. And one relationship is, I think, the most important one, and that is my relationship with myself. And this idea of self-searching in order to make my life better is fascinating to me. That throughout my life when I was drinking, what I felt about myself was created by what I observed other people feeling about me or saying to me or doing to me. That was how I built my image of myself. And with this program, you can not be a drunk to practice this program. And that's why I think it's amazing how the program can be applied to my stroke recovery. Because if I were to let other people's image of me define my image of myself, I don't know that I would have the courage and the patience to prioritize my recovery, because I'm the one who cares about myself the most. If I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. Sure, my family cares about me, but they're not with me 24/7. So I need to get comfortable with who I am and build this relationship with, you know what, forgiving. I forgive myself for those mistakes. Why did I do them? Why did I do these things that I wasn't being honest But other people around me, as much as I thought I was fooling them, I wasn't fooling anybody. And um, that judgment that I totally felt because of what people said to me was for good reason. I felt like I deserved to be thought of the way that I was thought of. And I recognize that I'm not being specific, and that's on purpose. Um, but as I took the time to do some self-searching, I was able to see why I was dishonest, why I did the things that I did, why I said the things that I said. Um, it was because of my insecurity. It was because the only image I had drawn of myself is the one that everybody drew for me. And that's not fair. They don't know me, you know? Um, what other people think of me is none of my business. That statement was introduced to me when I entered into recovery. And what I also thought this morning about judgment is that for me, I believe that judgment, my feeling that others are judging me, only exists, that feeling only exists if I'm living in the past or I'm living in the future. If I live in just this very moment, I do not feel judged by anybody. Doing this podcast is a significant um, leap for me as far as all of this judgment goes. I mean, imagine that like going online. Okay, everybody who's ever known me is able to see me talking about all of these feelings that I've had my whole life. You know, my family, my friends, my enemies, whoever it is, I'm letting everybody know what I'm thinking and how I feel. And there is a fear that I can feel. It's almost like a panic. If I let myself think about what other people might think of me and what I'm saying, I will panic and want to take down every episode I've ever recorded. But there's one thing that I haven't shared yet in my podcast episodes. And that is the one person that I still cared about judging me died 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. It's going to be 3 years. There was a lot of reluctance for me to talk about who I really am. Autumn, don't do that. She's scratching, trying to get out of the door. We're almost done. We're almost done. Um, there's this reluctance to be honest and open about my recovery and where I was and where I'm at now. Um, because I cared about what somebody else thought of me. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. I don't know. I've known this person my whole life, and I guess I always admired him. And I was afraid that he might not like me. It's weird, but I'm just being honest. And he died 3 years ago. And when he died, I spent 2 years. I had a stroke like 4 months after he died. And then I spent the following 2 years. Um, actually, I had the stroke the year before he died. I don't know. I can't remember right now, but it doesn't really matter. I spent 2 years focused on my stroke. Like, is it as bad as I thought it was? Can I keep working? And I just decided I was going to work, and I was going to work anyway until I couldn't work anymore. And my stroke was clearly worse than I thought it was. And I didn't give up. I gave in and realize that I need to prioritize my health. And when that happened, I was like, well, I'm not representing a company anymore. I'm representing myself. And that was like day one of me losing my job because of medical retirement. It was day one that I recognized, okay, there is nobody that I care. I don't care what anyone thinks. That struck me that day. That I was like, there's nobody left that I care about what they think about me. Meaning, I trust everybody else, my family. I trust that they're going to love me no matter what I say on this podcast. My friends, they're going to love me for whatever I say on this podcast. Strangers, maybe I can help someone. That's worth somebody judging me. And then the other one was I don't represent a company now, because I was always a little timid about sharing about my recovery because I was a representative of the company, and I don't know. I didn't think that that was okay for me to go online and start talking about about my recovery and everything when I really needed to be representing a company. So I did it. So I'm like, this is me, and I'm going to share it with the world. Whoever needs it can take something from it. Whoever doesn't need it can block me. But if I help one person, then it's all worth it. It's all worth it to share about, pardon me for a second, puppies, puppies, no, puppies down, Boris down. They're getting a timeout. Puppies stay. Okay, they were getting a little hyper and they were playing. So they are now in timeout. And Boris has something in his mouth. Sorry, that's got to be annoying when I'm doing that, but he's trying to get something out of his mouth or in his mouth. I'm not quite sure. There's something stuck in his lips somewhere and he's trying to find it. Okay. So I'm willing to share all of my irrational fears, and one of that includes the extreme judgment that I would have thought that I was going to experience by sharing all of these intimate thoughts and stuff. One thing that comes to mind, and I'll end with this, is Brené Brown's quote about vulnerability. And I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but I always had it written on a little magnet in my office. And that is that vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity, and she lists a bunch of other things, change. And the reason why I had that up in my office is because I recognize when I love Brené Brown, who doesn't? But I realized that if I don't get vulnerable, I'm not going to grow. And I really desperately wanted to grow in my company. I had goals of what role I didn't want to say who I wanted to be, but the role that I wanted to play in the company. And the only way that I was going to get there is if I got vulnerable. And the only way that I was going to be able to be creative in my job, which was very applicable to me because I was in marketing, is to get vulnerable and take chances. And that quote still holds true today. The only place where I'm going to be able to grow is within vulnerability. So I think that I today will travel every now and then into this scary place where I think, oh, what is such and such going to think about this or that? But I immediately chase those thoughts out with the confidence I have in vulnerability and what it's going to give to me. So that's my that's my request today, is that you think about, like, where are you too scared to be vulnerable in your life? And is there growth there that you're not willing to experience because you're afraid? So that's what I'm going to think about today. And I'm going to keep coming back here and recording my deepest, darkest secrets, because it's got to be helping somebody else. And whenever I'm starting to question, like, what I'm doing here, which happens, because I'm only human, somebody reaches out to me and reminds me that I've helped them today, that I'm a part of freaking people's daily routine in the morning. I mean, that's bizarre to me. I'm like, who would want to listen to me in the morning? But I hope that I'm a friend, I hope that I sound like your friend this morning when you're listening to the topic of the day, because that's what I want to be. Whoever wants to listen, I just want to be your friend, and I want us to grow together. So today I want to do that with vulnerability. So I'm going to try to get vulnerable today. I just did, and I'm going to end there. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.